It seems like every few years another UFO story pops up, grabs everyone's attention for a little bit, and then it kind of fades away. But there's one case that it sticks with you. It's the 1994 Ruwa Incident in Zimbabwe. 62 kids at the Ariel School all reported seeing a silver disc-shaped craft, like a classic UFO landing near their schoolyard. And these weren't teenagers. These were kids aged 6 to 12. And they all described similar details about the beings they encountered. It's a pretty wild story.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. It's not just another blurry photo or, someone saying they saw something out of the corner of their eye. The Ruwa incident is one of the most documented UFO events we have, especially when you consider the witnesses are all children.
Yeah.
And their testimonies gathered completely separately tell a remarkably consistent story. That's unusual in these cases. Really unusual.
Okay, so let's try to paint a picture for our listeners. It's September 16, 1994. A sunny afternoon at the Ariel School. Normal school day. Kids are out at playtime. When suddenly some of them start noticing these lights in the sky.
Right. Not just your average plane lights, though. These were described as bright flashing, moving in ways that just didn't make sense for any kind of normal aircraft. And naturally, the kids were drawn to it. Who wouldn't be?
So they're watching these lights, and they start descending closer and closer to the schoolyard until this silver disc appears, hovering just above the ground. I don't know about you, but if I saw that as a kid, I'd probably freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most people would. There's a mix of fear and just pure amazement in a lot of the children's accounts. They were scared, for sure, but also completely captivated by what they were seeing.
And a lot of them didn't just see the craft. They saw beings coming out of it.
Right. Not your typical little green men, though.
Yeah.
These were described as small stature, big heads, and these intensely large black eyes.
It sounds like something straight out of a movie. But for these kids, this was real life. One of the students, Samantha, she was 10 at the time, described it like this. It was silver, and it seemed to be floating. After it landed, I saw two small beings come out. They had big heads and very big eyes, which seemed to be watching me. I was paralyzed with fear, but somehow I was also curious. I felt they wanted to tell us something important.
That mix of terror and curiosity, it comes up a lot in the children's stories. Another child, Kundai, said, "I was with my friends when we saw the lights. We all ran to the fence to get a closer look. When the ship landed, two beings came out. I felt that they were watching us and trying to communicate. They didn't speak, but it seemed like they were sending us a message."
So there's this theme of communication, even though there wasn't any spoken language. A lot of people point to this idea of telepathic communication.
Yeah, not mind reading exactly, but more like a sense of shared thoughts or emotions and understanding without words. It's something that gets reported pretty often in these close encounter stories.
Another student, Tafanzwa, said this. I remember that the ship was very bright and had a different shape from anything I had ever seen. When the beings appeared, I felt that it was a very special moment, but also scary. Part of me wanted to run, but another part of me was intrigued. It was as if I could feel that they had something to teach us.
And it wasn't just a feeling. Many of the children said they received specific messages, not visually, but emotionally, even conceptually.
So they felt like these beings were trying to teach them something.
Yeah.
What kind of messages were they getting? Were they like complex equations or blueprints for spaceships?
Actually, the messages were a lot more down to earth. A lot of the kids talked about the environment, the need to take care of the planet, the dangers of pollution.
Really?
Yeah.
So these supposed aliens, if they were real, were more worried about us polluting the planet than anything else. You'd think they'd be more interested in, like, giving us advanced technology or something.
That is interesting, isn't it? It makes you wonder if our perception of aliens says more about us than it does about them. Are we projecting our own anxieties, our own hopes onto them?
It's a good question. But before we go too deep into the philosophical stuff, let's get back to the nuts and bolts of the case. You mentioned that the kids' stories were really consistent. But was there anyone trying to debunk them? Did anyone say it was all mass hysteria or something, like a 62 kids?
Yeah.
All saying basically the same thing? It does sound a bit unbelievable.
Of course there were skeptics. Some people suggested it could have been a mass hallucination or that the kids were influenced by movies or something. But the problem is, those explanations don't really hold up when you look at the details. There's no evidence that the kids had any shared story that could have influenced their descriptions. And a lot of them didn't really have much exposure to media back then.
So it wasn't like they all saw the same movie and then made up a story together. It just doesn't seem to add up.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just a local news story either. This thing blew up internationally. Researchers, journalists, everyone was interested. And one of the most important people who looked into the case was Dr. John E. Mack, a Harvard psychiatrist who specialized in studying alien encounters.
Yeah, Dr. Mack's involvement is really important. He wasn't just some random psychiatrist. This was a Pulitzer Prize-winning professor at Harvard. He went to Zimbabwe specifically to interview the children, and his conclusions were pretty remarkable. He didn't find any evidence that the kids were lying or being coached, and he was really impressed by how genuine their emotions seemed and how consistent their styles were.
So a Harvard psychiatrist is saying these kids weren't making things up. They really believe they saw something extraordinary. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. Dr. Mack did a lot of work on what he called experiencer psychology, looking at the long-term effects of these encounters, how people process them, how they integrate them into their lives, how they might change the way they see the world.
So we've got consistent eyewitness accounts,
Yeah.
no good explanation for how the kids could have made it all up, and a Harvard psychiatrist who believes them. So if it wasn't a hoax or a hallucination, what was it? What did these children actually see and experience that day?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's a question that's still unanswered. The Ruwa incident is a reminder that there are things in this world that we just can't explain easily. It makes us question everything we think we know about reality and about what might be out there in the universe.
It's both exciting and a little bit scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you think about all the things we don't know. And for the children of Ruwa, this wasn't just some abstract idea. This was their reality.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a one-time thing either. This experience stayed with them. It shaped their lives in ways that we're still uncovering.
That's a good point. We've talked a lot about the event itself. But what about the aftermath? What happened to these kids after they saw this UFO? What was the impact on their lives?
Well, a lot of them have said that they felt different afterward. Some of them felt a heightened awareness, a deeper connection to nature, a stronger commitment to protecting the environment. But others felt isolated, misunderstood, even ridiculed for talking about what they saw.
That must have been really tough, especially for kids, to have this huge experience and then have people not believe you.
It's a testament to how strongly they believed what they saw, that they held on to their truth even when people doubted them. And it's a reminder that we need to listen to people who have these kinds of experiences, even if they make us uncomfortable, even if they challenge our beliefs.
So they grew up with this experience, this secret, that they couldn't really share. And yet it seems like it also gave them a sense of purpose, a mission to protect the planet.
Right. That's what makes the Ruwa incident so powerful. It's not just about UFOs. It's about the human story. It's about resilience, about the power of belief, and about the mystery of the unknown.
It's a story that makes us confront our own limits, our own ideas about what's possible. And it reminds us that sometimes the most incredible things can happen to ordinary people, and that those events can have a ripple effect that lasts for years and years.
Absolutely. The Ruwa incident, with all its witnesses, its detailed accounts, its lasting impact, it really forces us to look at the unknown, to question what we think we know, and to consider the possibility that we're not alone in the universe.
And it reminds us that even the most extraordinary events can have a profound impact on ordinary people, especially children.
The Ruwa incident is a story that will continue to be told, debated, and analyzed for years to come. It's a story that challenges us to expand our thinking, embrace the unknown, and never stop asking questions.
And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that even in the face of the extraordinary faith, the truly remarkable thing is the human capacity for wonder, for resilience, and for the unwavering search for meaning in a universe that often seems indifferent to our existence.
It's a case that stays with you. It makes you think. It makes you wonder. And it reminds us that there's still so much out there that we don't know.
And that's a good place to leave it for today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me. It's important to remember this isn't just about, a UFO sighting. It's about what this did to these kids. I mean, an impact that is still felt to this day. They weren't just watching this thing happen. It happened to them and it changed them.
Yeah, I mean, you really get that sense when you read the accounts. These kids grappling with such big ideas and emotions, so young. It's like their childhoods were just completely interrupted by this thing, this encounter with the unknown.
Imagine that. You're a kid, just out playing. And suddenly you're face to face with something that just turns everything you thought you knew upside down. Your whole reality is shaken.
Yeah. It's not just the craft itself, it's that communication aspect.
Yeah.
The feeling that these beings were trying to say something. And for a lot of the kids, it wasn't just fear or curiosity. It was like they were being given this message, a warning, a plea to change something.
And the message itself is pretty striking, especially for kids in the 90s. Environmental responsibility. I mean, back then, awareness about the environment wasn't what it is today. But these kids came home talking about the planet, needing to protect it.
It's almost like this encounter woke something up in them, a sense of responsibility for the earth, like they were given a glimpse of something bigger. And they carried that with them.
Exactly. And that's a big part of why this case is still so relevant. It makes us think about what contact with aliens could really mean, not just for one person, but for all of us.
Yeah, could something like this actually change the world? Could it bring everyone together,
Yeah,
with this shared experience, this shared concern for the planet? It's a pretty big question.
it is. The children of Ruwa. They offer a glimpse into that possibility. It's not just about proving or disproving aliens. It's about what that contact could actually mean, the good and the bad.
It's mind-blowing to think about what would it do to our science, our technology, religion, everything we think we know. But let's go back to the children. What happened to them after all of this? How did this change their lives?
A lot of them talk about how they just felt different afterward. Some felt more aware, a stronger connection to nature, more commitment to protecting the environment. But there were others who felt isolated, misunderstood, even ridiculed for sharing what happened to them.
That's got to be hard, especially at that age. To have this experience, that challenges everything you think is real. And then the people you trust, the people who are supposed to protect you, they don't believe you.
It shows how deeply they believed what they saw. They held on to their truth even when everyone was doubting them. And it just highlights how important it is to listen to people who have these experiences, even if we don't understand, even if it makes us question things.
So they grew up with this experience, this secret they couldn't really talk about.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like it gave them a sense of purpose, like a mission to protect the planet.
That's exactly it. That's what makes this so compelling. It's not just about UFOs. It's about the human story. It's about being resilient. It's about believing in something and the mystery of it all.
It's a story that forces us to look at our own limits. What we think is possible. It reminds us that incredible things can happen to anyone and that those things can change the world.
The Ruwa incident, all the witnesses, the details, it really forces us to confront the unknown, to ask what we really know, to consider that maybe, just maybe, we're not alone.
And maybe the biggest takeaway is that even the most extraordinary events can have a real lasting impact on regular people, especially children. It's incredible to think about all this time, all the people who have looked into this case, and the Ruwa incident is still a total mystery. We have all these really specific accounts from the kids, a Harvard psychiatrist who says they're telling the truth, and yet we still don't have any real answers.
Yeah, it's both amazing and frustrating, right? It just doesn't fit into any neat little category. Makes you question what's really possible, what reality even is.
It's funny, this whole thing reminds me of something that happened to me when I was a kid. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, and one night, my friends and I saw this light in the sky. It was moving all over the place. Not like any plane I'd ever seen. We were sure it was a UFO.
Yeah.
And for years, I really believed that. I mean, I don't know what to think. But that experience, that feeling of wonder about the unknown, it never really went away.
I think that's the thing about the unexplained, right? Those experiences, they stick with you, whether you understand them or not. They shape how you see things. They make you curious. They remind you that there's so much we just don't know about the world, about the universe.
And maybe that's a good thing, right? To be reminded that we don't have all the answers, that there are still mysteries out there.
Totally. It keeps us asking questions, keeps us exploring, keeps us pushing the boundaries of what we think we know.
So what does this all mean for us? For people like us who weren't there that day, but who are totally fascinated by this story, what can we take away from the Ruwa incident, besides all the mystery and the speculation?
I think the biggest thing is that it reminds us that our understanding of reality, it's always changing. There might be things out there, experiences, entire ways of being that we just can't even grasp right now.
It's like a call to be more open-minded, to listen to people who have had these kinds of experiences, even if they challenge us, even if they make us feel uncomfortable.
And maybe it's also a call to action. The message those kids got about the environment, whether it was from aliens or from somewhere deep inside themselves, it's a message that's more relevant than ever.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we're all connected.
Yeah.
What we do matters, that we have a responsibility to take care of this planet, not just for us, but for everyone who comes after us.
The Ruwa incident, with all its unanswered questions, it's a powerful symbol of the unknown, a reminder that there's still so much out there to discover, to understand, to explore.
And I think more than anything, it reminds us that even when faced with the extraordinary, what's truly remarkable is how we as humans respond to that. We wonder, we find a way to keep going, and we never stop trying to find meaning, even in a universe that often seems totally indifferent to us.
It's a story that will keep being told, debated, analyzed for years to come. It challenges us to think bigger, to embrace what we don't know, and to never stop asking questions.
Well said. That's a great place to wrap things up. Thanks for joining me today. It's been fascinating.
Thanks for having me.